Today, we're going on a wild journey into literally one of the most mind-bending geological paradoxes our planet has to offer. We are going to totally shatter how you look at the Sahara Desert. And to do it, we'll be following a trail of clues that stretches all the way from ancient rock carvings deep down into the mud at the absolute bottom of the ocean. So just picture the Sahara in your head right now. You're probably thinking of an incredibly dry, harsh landscape, right? Endless sand dunes, maybe a couple of camels, but check out these ancient depictions. At least 12,000 years ago, artists living right there in northern Africa painted a completely different world. We're talking vibrant savannas, massive flowing rivers, and most incredibly, hippos and giraffes. Which begs the obvious question, how on earth did desert artists know exactly how to paint hippos and giraffes unless they were actually living right alongside them? I mean, these carvings aren't just, rough little doodles. They're incredibly accurate. And they're found everywhere, stretching all the way from the Western Sahara over to Saudi Arabia. For these ancient artists to know so much about savanna animals that need massive amounts of water to survive, they couldn't have just heard rumors. They had to be there with them. It completely proves that the climate wasn't just a little off from what it is today, it was completely unrecognizable. Okay, let's dive right into section 1, hippos in the desert. The very first piece of this puzzle actually popped up back in the mid-1800s. Imagine a German explorer making his way across the brutal Sahara, and he suddenly stumbles upon these ancient engravings. He was completely baffled. He wrote, "They made pictures of hippos and giraffes and other savanna species that need to live near water. You'd never find them in the modern Sahara." And he hit the nail on the head. We're not talking about a couple of unusual rainy years here. This was a massive, long-term transformation. Animals and humans just made themselves totally at home in what is literally now the middle of the world's largest hot desert. That brings us to section 2, clues from ocean mud. So the artists left us this gorgeous record of what happened, but modern scientists still had to figure out why. Geologists formally call this era the African humid period, or the Green Sahara. It's an incredible span of time, kicking off roughly 15,000 years ago and wrapping up about 5,000 years ago, where northern Africa was just drastically wetter. But how did they actually figure out that exact timeline? Well, it took a huge collaboration across a bunch of totally different scientific disciplines. It's like the ultimate scientific crossover episode. You had geologists pulling up deep sea sediment, archaeologists out scouring the desert for ancient human settlements, and paleoclimatologists zooming way out to look at the Earth's orbit. All these different detectives combined their clues to build an airtight case for this lost green paradise. For instance, right off the coast of Mauritania, way down at the bottom of the Atlantic, geologists extracted these long deep-sea sediment cores. Why? To measure Saharan dust flux. The logic is actually beautifully simple. Think about it. More Saharan dust blowing out into the ocean means a drier, sandier climate, exactly like we have right now. But less dust? That means a wetter climate where all that soil is anchored down by plant roots. And those cores prove that during the Humboldt period, the dust output was slashed by almost half. No way around it. The sand just stopped blowing. And wait, that ocean mud actually held another microscopic secret: pollen. The pollen trapped in those exact same sediment cores showed this massive explosion of plants like grasses and sedges. At the exact same time, pollen from typical desert plants, like a phedra, just plummeted. This microscopic evidence proves beyond a doubt that lush vegetation completely took over the sand, spreading all the way across to the Arabian Peninsula. Let's move to section 3, the climate engine. Now you might be wondering, what could possibly possess the power to turn an entire desert green? For that, we've got to zoom out to the planetary level. Step 1, Earth's orbital tilt goes through these natural cyclical changes. Step 2, this slight wobble ends up giving the northern hemisphere about 4 to 8% more solar energy. Step 3, all that extra heat causes hot air to rise, which supercharges the African summer monsoon, basically pulling those heavy rains way further north over the Sahara. And finally, step 4, the new rain sparks massive plant growth, which locks all that wonderful moisture right into the soil. The real key to the whole shebang is a concept called albedo. Bare sand is highly reflective, meaning it has a high albedo. It bounces the sun's energy right back into space. But dark green vegetation? It absorbs heat. So as these plants spread, they lowered the land's albedo. This created an incredible warming feedback loop, helping the whole northern hemisphere hold on to that moisture and keeping the region super warm, wet, and intensely green. All right, section 4, life in a wet Sahara. So we know the physics now, but let's get back down to the ground. 340,000. That is the number of square kilometers covered by just one of the massive ancient lakes that formed in the Sahara's natural basins. Seriously, 340,000. Up to 160 meters deep, this single body of water was larger than all of the North American Great Lakes combined. Just try to wrap your head around standing on the shore of a literal inland sea right where endless bone-dry dunes sit today. And this is where our ancient rock artists make their return. Because these colossal lakes stuck around long enough, they actually left behind ancient shorelines. Think of them like giant geological bathtub rings. Well, modern researchers noticed something absolutely amazing. The rock art was only ever created above those ancient shorelines. Without even meaning to, those artists created a human-made high water mark, perfectly verifying the lake levels were scientists thousands of years later. How cool is that? The absolute paradox of all this is just staggering. Take the Tenere Desert in the southern Sahara. Today, it is so aggressively dry, they literally call it a desert within a desert. But look at what archaeologists are digging out of these ancient lake beds. Fossils of crocodiles, turtles, hippos, and even giant Nile perch. And right next to them are the telltale signs of human life thriving on the water, old fireplaces, hunting tools, and mounds of discarded fish bones. You heard me, massive piles of fish bones in what is now one of the driest places on Earth. But the clues aren't just buried in the dirt. They're actually hidden right in the words people speak today. Across the continent, you've got distinct modern languages in Mali over in West Africa and Ethiopia out in East Africa. Now, these languages are completely different from one another, but linguists discovered something wild. They still share remarkably similar root words for hippo. It's like a linguistic echo, a tiny little breadcrumb suggesting that these cultures, which are separated by thousands of miles today, might have once lived side by side, navigating the exact same hippo-filled rivers of the Central Sahara. Let's move on to Section 5, the sudden drying. Sadly, this lush paradise couldn't last forever. If we trace the timeline, warming began up to 15,000 years ago. Then, from about 9,000 down to 5,000 years ago, human populations totally exploded across the Sahara. But then, right around 5,500 years ago, the dust records in those deep-sea cores show a super dramatic rapid drop in moisture. In geological terms, the humid period basically collapsed in the blink of an eye. It only took a few centuries for the whole ecosystem to dry up, forcing people to pack up and retreat back toward the Nile River. So why did it end so abruptly? Well, the planetary climate engines simply shifted into reverse. Earth's orbit wobbled again, incoming solar energy dropped, the northern hemisphere cooled off, and without all that extra heat dragging the weather systems north, those life-giving monsoons were pushed right back south, exactly where they are today. The albedo feedback loop broke, the sand took over once more, and the green Sahara faded into a memory. Finally, Section 6, a greener future. What does all this ancient history actually mean for our changing planet? Well, check out this number, 230. The African humid period we've been exploring, it wasn't some freak one-off accident, no way. It was just the most recent of 230 distinct green periods that have swept across the Sahara over the last 8 million years. Let that sink in. It's not an anomaly at all. It's a continuous ancient heartbeat of the planet itself. And honestly, that should completely change how we look at the Earth. Because solar radiation is always dynamically shifting thanks to these massive natural orbital cycles, the Sahara is almost certainly going to turn green again. Now, sure, it might take thousands of years, and obviously modern human-induced climate change is this gigantic new variable we have to deal with, but the basic underlying mechanics of our solar system virtually guarantee that the Earth will keep transforming. Which leaves us with this final, really beautiful thought to chew on. Our world is never completely static. So if and when the Sahara greens up again thousands of years from now, transforming back into a vibrant, lush network of lakes and savannas, will future artists be there to capture it? They probably won't be carving it into stone next time, but the story they tell will be the exact same one we uncovered today.